They knew the terrain better than any map. Their footsteps were silent, their eyes sharp. They could track a snake across dry rock or follow the wind to a hidden camp. They were Apache warriors. But in a dark twist of history, they weren't fighting against the U.S. Army. They were fighting for it. This is the forgotten story of the Apache Scouts, native men who were recruited by the U.S. military to hunt down their own people. Some saw them as traitors, others saw them as survivors. But one thing is certain, their legacy is steeped in blood, betrayal, and impossible choices.
Long before European settlers arrived, the Apache people thrived across what is now the American Southwest: Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and parts of northern Mexico. They were fierce, independent, and mobile. Living in small bands, they relied on hunting, raiding, and intimate knowledge of the desert to survive. But their way of life came under siege in the 1800s. With the Mexican-American War and the expansion of the U.S., Apache lands were swallowed up, and their resistance was branded as terrorism. To the U.S. Army, the Apache were a problem to be solved, and they devised a brutal solution. By the 1870s, the U.S. military realized it couldn't defeat the Apache without Apache help. Enter the Apache Scouts, native men hired as trackers, guides, and translators. Their pay? $25 a month, a horse, food, and the bitter promise of better treatment. The Army exploited divisions between bands. Some Apaches agreed to help capture rivals, especially those who had refused to surrender. But it wasn't just politics, it was survival. Many scouts were coerced. Some were prisoners offered a chance to life. Others joined to protect their families, who would otherwise starve in remote reservations. The government framed it as Indian helping Indian, but in truth, it was often brother against brother. One of the most infamous uses of Apache Scouts came in the pursuit of Geronimo, the legendary Chiricahua Apache leader who refused to surrender. In the 1880s, Geronimo and a small band of warriors eluded thousands of U.S. troops and Mexican soldiers. But the ones who got closest to him weren't white men. They were fellow Apaches. Men like Mickey Free, Tom Horn, and Chato helped track Geronimo across hundreds of miles of rugged terrain. Eventually, Geronimo was cornered. In 1886, under pressure, he surrendered. But it came at a price. The scouts who had helped capture him were betrayed. They were exiled alongside Geronimo, sent to Florida as prisoners. They had done their duty, and they were thrown away. The Apache Scouts served for decades, even after the Indian Wars ended. They guarded forts, led patrols, translated for white officers. But they were never truly trusted and never truly accepted by their own. To the U.S. military, they were tools, useful, then disposable. To many Apaches, they were collaborators, blamed for helping crush Apache resistance. The truth is far more complex. They lived between worlds, caught in a violent system they didn't create, making impossible choices to keep their people alive. Some hoped that service would lead to respect, citizenship, land. What they got was silence. The last official Apache Scouts retired in 1947. Their legacy is barely mentioned in textbooks. Few monuments exist. Few names are remembered. And yet they helped shape the American Southwest. Their descendants still live on Apache land today, some proud of their ancestors' bravery, others still wrestling with the pain of divided loyalties. In recent years, Native scholars and families have begun reclaiming their stories, not to glorify them, but to understand them. Because history is never simple. And the story of the Apache Scouts is not one of betrayal, but of survival. They were warriors turned guides, rebels turned scouts. They wore the uniform of the U.S. Army, but they never stopped being Apache. This is their story, a story of dignity under duress, of wounds that haven't fully healed, and of a history that still echoes in the dry wind of the Southwest. If you found this story powerful, like, subscribe, and share it. Let the world remember the Apache Scouts, because their silence has lasted long enough.